Hey, welcome back. This is Bridges and Breakdowns. If you are under the sound of my voice, you have returned for the musings of your favorite millennials, posted up at the intersection of 5 generations who love to tussle. I'm your co-host, Alyzza. I am joined today by my beautiful, wonderful, who has something in her eye, best friend and co-host.
It's Lorryn, y'all. Hello. Welcome.
Welcome. We are two serious, but at times unserious girls trying to integrate the best of what each generation has to offer, acting as that bridge generation to what we should keep and improve upon, or do the hard job of breaking down what needs to be left behind. So this season, we turned the lens on curiosity. We got really curious about our environment, our relationships, and today we are talking about what does civic engagement look like today? As active members of our community, we all have something to contribute, but how do we make it intentional, responsive, and impactful in our very evolving society? So join us. It's time. Best friend, how you doing?
What Melanie say? Cutting it close and barely making it.
I've integrated that into my life. I've been telling people that every time somebody asks me how I'm doing, cutting it close, barely making it.
She did that all the time.
Oh, in law school?
Yes, that was like a mantra that sadly has carried on. But it's real though. It's real. Hey.
Yeah. It is.
Yes, I'm glad that you're incorporating it. Welcome to the club.
I don't want to. I don't want to be jumped into that gang. No, thank you. I would like some ease back into my life.
Hell
but
yeah.
It'll be there soon, child. It has to be. Trouble don't last always, which brings us to...
life for me ain't been no crystal step.
I know, girl.
Right. That leads us to today's topic about civic engagement. I'm going to tell you guys. So essentially, we got to this topic. We had picked out what we wanted to do for the season, and we had all of our topics. And I keep a lot with social media, and so I'm seeing like everybody discussing politics, and then Kamala's loss. All of that was swirling in my head, and then I watched a video of Marshawn Lynch, which I've watched many times, but whatever. It was him talking to Richard Sherman, inviting him out to like a turkey drive, and he was like, "I'm improving my community," and I was like, you know what? We should have something about local politics because. Yeah. Everybody's getting so caught up in like having the purest, best candidate at the federal level, but what really impacts you on a day-to-day basis, well, at least before we let this tyrannical idiot in, was your local, municipality. So
yeah,
so I threw that in. I feel like it was late. I text you like, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
But yeah. So shout out to Marshawn Lynch for inspiring me as always.
I love that.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about our glowing grows. Even though that was that made me happy. But would you like to go first?
No, I want to hear your even better glow. I love to see you.
My even better glow. I got to see our little cousin, Meg, this weekend. It was so good. If you know me, you know I love Meg Thee Stallion. I think that she is one of the best rappers out. No female male qualifiers. She's smart. She's witty. People get hung up on the fact that she, does a lot of pussy rap, but she does a lot more than that if you listen to it. But either way, she's very clever and very intelligent, and it shows with her wordplay, regardless of the fact that she's talking about her puss. Even though many of these rappers talk about their tallywhackers and drugs and all that other stuff, so to hold women to that stand.
Tallywhacker. The grandma is the baby.
Ever since I was born, I was never a child. I just came out in the know.
Knowing.
Word to, what's her name? Tiffany Pollard. But yeah, it was amazing. Her show was great. She gave something for the real hotties, real hot girl shit. All my faves. She did Captain Hook. Oh my God. I
love that for you.
It was amazing. The best time. She's also gorgeous.
So beautiful.
We have really, really great seats. Yes, like
she's just her body is out of control now. That girl, she's hit the gym for real.
For real. Like it's real deal. And just her dancing, all of it was really fun. And she performed that metal song, which I like metal. I know it's not everybody's thing, but it's really fun to watch her perform it. Because you could tell she really enjoys it.
I love that.
Yeah, that was my glow.
Well, my glow is very quick and not as exciting as yours. But girl, I think I've unlocked a new cheat code. Take yourself out to breakfast in the middle of the week. If you have some remote days. So I basically had like a work from home day. I had an afternoon meeting off site, but I was like, I'm not going to the office and this other site. So I dropped my kids off at school, and then I started my day going to breakfast. I went to and it's like during the week, breakfast spots, even in DC, because we're a brunching city. Like we will brunch down. With no reservation, I walked into one of my favorite brunch spots on a Monday morning and started my day with a hot breakfast, some hot coffee. Me and Henry, my waiter, we was locked in. He took care of me. I took care of him. I had the best time sitting down, starting my day with just setting a really good intention for the week. So I think I might try to incorporate that this summer. Like my days where I'm working remote, I'm going to maybe like take myself out to breakfast. As a parent, especially, we don't really do hot meals. You're always having to like put your kids' food down first, and you're snacking and eating. So to just sit down and let somebody serve you, that really set the pace for my week. I had a good time. I had a great time.
Oh, I love that for you.
Yeah,
I hope you continue to do that.
I will. It was good. So love that for me. You can even get a little brunch cocktail if you want to, because the rules are you can't be drunk at work, but you can have a drink. No,
you can have a little buzz. It might help you when they send you them emails and you be like, I just sent it. Instead of being like, per my last email, you be like, you know, I feel good.
It's cool. I'm chilling.
Let me just retype this shit all over again.
Girl. Yeah. So that was fun. That was my glow for the week.
Your glow.
What about your girlfriend? Any negativity that you're growing from?
Yes, but not negativity in a fun way. Unfortunately, it's just something that I really need to rein in.
Okay.
And honestly, I've been charging it to my head because it really is my head, not my heart. I've been ignoring people, emails and text messages, and it's like, oh man. I mean, like I talk to certain people all day, like you know, like Jazz. Like there are people who I talk to all day, every day, and y'all know the inner workings of my life. So like, if I'm you know what I mean? Like if I'm out MIA for a day, right? You know, oh, she got to do her billing. You know, like there's things that y'all know. But like I might start a conversation with somebody. Like I'll wish them a happy birthday. And then I'll be like, hey, you know, what's the and then they'll respond. And then I'll go on with the rest of my day. And then I'll be like, damn, I need to respond back to them. And like I wish somebody a happy birthday in May. And they sent me like a update of their life. And I'm like, man, I need to. And I still haven't. And I think about it. So this what drives me insane is that like I was driving home from Milwaukee thinking about like, damn, I really need to reach out. And then sometimes I talk myself out of it like, girl, it's been over a month now. And then I just, you know, so yes. So I'm trying to grow from that. Okay. So hopefully, let's see, in 2 months, I will have better a report that I've improved, like especially phone calls. Like it's just,
and not to blame everything on your ADHD, but I think some of that also might stem from how you're managing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so too. But like, you know, I also...
It still doesn't make it any better, like on the receiving end of it, because you're not communicating that to people and they might be taking it personally.
Exactly. And I just know how it feels when I felt like I've been ignored. Yeah. And communication is, you know, aside or in addition to being on time, which I'm also working on, that's like a show of respect for people.
Yes,
and I don't want people, especially people that I love, to not think I respect them. Because like, it really is my brain. Otherwise, I would do what I need to do. Because I do love you, and that's why I reached out. But like, the follow through sometimes is sticky.
That can be hard. And you can't really control how people respond, even after you
after I apologize and I tell them, and then I feel guilt.
Go on an apology tour after you've come to. You're like, my medicine is working now. I can do it. And they're
like I'm sorting it all out. But right now I'm getting through work emails. But soon I'll be back to like my texts and stuff. So you know. But I'm moving through. I'm not letting it paralyze me. I'm just going to push.
Right. Because that being bogged down by the shame it doesn't serve anybody. It's not going to make you a better friend. It's not going to make you kinder to yourself, to show up whole and, you know, to deal with the fallout or not the fallout. It could be that people are very like understanding and like, girl, it's fine. I understand. We've grown. You know, I love that. You are prioritizing that. That's important.
Yes.
Right? My grow is definitely based on negativity. And I don't even know if I can grow from this. Man, the YNs got my mama. I feel like it's my responsibility because, you know, we got to raise these parents. We got to help. We have to help, you know, rear them in the ways that they should go. And I've been telling this girl, do not be walking around with certain things on your person, because if you ever get robbed, that is going to be hard to replace. And, you know, she was being hard-headed. She ain't want to listen. And Miss Mamas ran into the store. They was watching her. They was clocking her. She came back to her car, and she was like, nah, I know I didn't leave that window down. No, you didn't.
They
You did
bust
not.
that window.
Oh my God. And it felt like a scripted comedy at this point because as like I bust a U and go straight to her to help, keep her calm, make sure we're good, actually troubleshoot, take the car to get the windows repaired, all that good stuff. The patrolman is already there, writing down a case number so she can have her stuff together. Because it was in a parking lot. She was in this real sketchy strip mall that I would have told her not to go to. The YNs was watching her. She wasn't in that store for more than 5 minutes. Came back, her purse was gone, but and she had put it in the back seat. And I was like, girl, you can't. They was watching you. They saw you.
Yeah, but see, she was trying. Nah, I ain't gonna lie. I got tinted back seats though. But if they watching, they watching.
They watching. Her back seat was tinted too. But it's like if you even with tints, I don't know how blacked out your shit is, but if you get real close, if you're like intent on figuring out what's in the back, unless it's blacked out, you can see a little bit. You can see a silhouette of a bag.
That's true. That's
and
true.
So they saw her purse, and so she was the only car. But the funny part was the groundskeeper was this little old man. Let's call him Otis. He's walking by as my mom is talking to police. I'm sitting there trying to figure out where we go. My all hands on deck. My husband is telling us where to go to get the car. He's made an appointment for her to go get the window replaced real quick. We're rallying. Little old man walks by, sweeping up the glass that just got busted out her car. He said, "Damn shame. It's the third car this week." I said, "Sir, it's Monday." "What do you mean the third car this week?" So that might be my PS for the end of the show, because you young niggas got to stop. Not in your own community. Go uptown and rob them rich white people in Georgetown. Why are we focusing and targeting to each other? So the police were like, "It's going to be a hot summer, ma'am. I'm just letting you know right now. Y'all, these are some best practices. But yeah, they actually they was going up and down this. I'm not gonna say the street. They was going all up and down this street this morning. You probably the fifth car responded to. So it's just gonna be a hot summer. Marion Barry did not die for this. You niggas can be at somebody's job right now. There's summer youth enrichment programs. You can be making money the honest way. You don't need to be bopping little old ladies' cars. My mama not a little old lady, but you didn't know that. You don't need to be, harassing our people. So, in the spirit of civic engagement and how we can show up better as community members, we need to be accountable to one another. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's bounty. And I'm on y'all's head because y'all need to be doing better.
So what you need to grow in, friend? I don't see no growth.
I feel like I take, as a oldest child and as a Virgo only daughter, I always feel responsible for when other people shenan. So for me, I'm like, girl, I should have taken your documents out of your bag and put it in the file cabinet after I told you for the third time that you didn't need to be walking around with that. I'm trying to grow a little bit as my own. Release that. I'm not in charge of everybody. That's really what I'm having to concede. I'm like, I'm not in charge of everyone. It's okay. We're going to make mistakes. I was trying not to victim blame because I was like, oh, I wanted to make sure she was good because that's a violation. You absolutely are going to feel violated when that happens. Like, somebody was watching me. I'm grateful that didn't turn out even worse, or they could have ran up on me. Things could have really... I'm very grateful to God that they ended. It's just things that went missing that can be replaced. Right. We went and paid, $250 to get your window replaced that same day. But my issue is, again, in our community, everybody ain't got $250 up top cash to go pay. That could have literally ruined. And at the top of the month, rent is due. What do you mean? Right. I have an extra $250 to go get my window replaced. Who? Don't let me. Okay. I'm finding it. I'm finding it. Yeah, that really disturbed my spirit. I just wanted to share that for the good of the order. Get your nephews, get your sons, get your little cousins. They do not need to be out here in the street. And the way Donald Trump is moving, the way where they're building this machine to incarcerate citizens and non-citizens, you gonna wake up on the wrong side of an El Salvadorian jail if you keep playing.
Or you gonna be on the front lines of some punk ass war he done got us into, because after kicking out a bunch of service people because of how they identify, he needs to fill them gaps.
Yeah, it's too much going on. But yes, that Low and Grow probably lasted a little bit longer than we expected. But so you know what? We're gonna keep the Woo Girl very short. Woo Girl is our current event segment that we try to connect to the main stage of the day, which is civic engagement. And I just wanted to throw a nod to the news out of New York City last week, the Democratic primary results. We have a changing of the guard. A 33-year-old by the name of Zohran Mamdani is the new Democratic candidate-elect for the New York City primary. Since Eric Adams has now dropped out from the Democratic Party, he is running as an independent. Ron was running against Cuomo, an old guard.
Check that, Bernie. Okay, sorry.
Here we go. I'll always be here for some Bernie slander, but it signified a generational change. And I was I'll say this. I was reading from Run for Something that since Zohran Mamdani won Tuesday night, more than 1,100 young people have reached out to Run for Something to explore running for local office, one of our biggest spikes for the year yet. And he had the 18 to 24-year-olds, from what I was reading, were the largest group of New York City voters, followed by 25 to 29-year-olds, and then 30 to 34-year-olds. So really, Gen Z and young millennials represented the biggest voting bloc for a millennial candidate. So the interesting part around some of the results for me, he is a Democratic socialist. So having a very left candidate and seeing how the racial divide or the returns for like by race versus by socioeconomic status or like income versus generation, it was a very interesting race. The Black elders overwhelmingly went for Cuomo. And everybody else overwhelmingly voted for Mamdani. He had a really great margin. That young Black voters were the best youth demographic for Zohran. But for the Black elders to overwhelmingly vote for Cuomo, that was an interesting finding for me. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are you finding it? I'm finding it.
Black people. No. So I'm happy that the youth are voting. I think that that's great. I do hope that they continue to stay engaged, regardless of if it's a candidate that they absolutely love.
That they can stand.
I think that the divide is, Black people for generations, since we've been allowed to vote, we have been pragmatic.
Yes.
And we always think about how we can harm reduction, right? Like we know, for lack of a better term, these white folks and white assimilants that want to be like white folks are going to vote for this person or, whatever. So we try to have a coalition around who we think has the best option to be voted by whoever feels like they're democratically aligned, right?
Who can win a general election?
Exactly. Because even for instance, when Joe ran and then he made Kamala his VP or whatever, everybody kind of got around him. Even though for as much as we supported Kamala, I don't believe that she didn't have that support then. But it was just like, these people are not going to vote for this Black woman. And we see that Joe Biden has momentum with folks that would never vote. Let's just all go to him to make sure that we get a candidate.
So you're talking about in 2020.
In 2020, right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, that is an example of how we support. It's not so much, I do think that at times it is based on their platforms and, obviously they don't want somebody that's terrible.
Yeah.
But in this instance, because young people do not vote and they do not vote in impactful ways, I don't think nothing changed from the old guard. They back the candidate that they believe most people who are democratically aligned will vote for.
Yeah.
The change was that the young folks, because he passed, and they're excited, they voted for him, which shows that if they voted, we could have candidates that we like, or that we at least can push to do the things that we want, which, I've been seeing some, because I have been kind of detached, especially from New York, but even social media, that people are trying to make it seem like, oh, the old guard are so conservative, blah, 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 blah. No. All this shows to me is that y'all asses need to vote. And that I think is what y'all should take away from it, is that if y'all vote, we could have better candidates. And I'm interested to see how they will do when they're running, since that there was an uptick in folks that are interested, because politics is not purely off of who has the best platform. In a perfect world, it'll be like that, but there's also relationships.
Yeah.
There are things,
tenure.
Right, experience. You got to whip vote, so you're going to have to compromise. And y'all have shown that you don't have that ability. And even now, I've seen people that are like, oh, he's the Democratic nominee. So everybody, regardless of if you voted for Cuomo, you need to support him. Ain't that what we said about Kamala in 2024? And everybody sat y'all asses at home and didn't vote.
Votes. Yeah.
And withheld votes, or gave them to Jill Stein. And now you want these Black people.
Earn my vote,
right, she has to earn my vote. And, I saw people going crazy on Hakeem Jeffries because he was pointing out the fact that Mom Donnie, I don't know, so I'm just reporting the news. I didn't write it. That Mom Donnie said something that was offensive to Jewish people. And I'm assuming it has something to do with Israel, right? But the reality is Black people and Jewish people voted correctly in the 2020 in this last election. And so when you talk about building coalitions and making sure that you have power, you have to support who supports you. So him coming out and saying, Mom Donnie, it's great that he's a candidate, but he also needs to, you know, figure out a way to talk about Jewish people that does not isolate all of the potential voters that he has.
And we can critique the why that is, or even how him being pro-Palestine is not inherently anti-Jewish people, right?
Exactly.
It is not a criticism of, you can criticize Israeli politics and Zionism and that not be an indictment of Jewish people as a culture and people. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. And so I'm not saying that whatever Mom Donnie or whatever he was accused of, he actually did. But if he did do something that was offensive, Hakeem calling it out, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And just because he's speaking up on behalf of Jewish people does not mean that he's a Zionist or that, you know, he doesn't believe that, you know, Palestine should have their own, you know, state and all of that stuff. It's just calling out that we have to. Everybody does not feel as strongly about certain issues, but they are still willing to vote for the collective candidate.
And that's what I'm agreeing with. That what I did not like about the conversation was how quickly it went into disrespect for the Black elders. Yes. And it's like, you can critique that voting bloc as being conservative. You can critique even their...
I think they're conservative interpersonally.
Okay.
But like, as far as
Black people would be Republicans if the Republican
weren't racist.
They have conservative views. If the Republicans weren't racist, a lot of Black people would absolutely be more aligned with Republican values. But we, as a voting bloc,
because it's evangelicalism that's got a chokehold on our people.
There is so much, and there's so much around some, you know, the evangelicalism, the homophobia, some of the, you know, there's some really, but it's not inherently a Black thing, right? Like every demographic, every subculture of people has their own issues, and we can work with that in-house. I don't like us playing into the white people's games of like calling elders stupid, and we just need them to die out for us to be.
How dare you?
That is what I'm like, okay, we can't pretend as if the people who actually, the boomers and the silent generation, who actually consolidated our right to vote are the people who need to die so that we can have these pure progressive
utopia
politicians. Right. And so
and y'all are stupid and y'all are not well read. And that's what bothers me, because there's a lot of fucking Republicans that were yuppies and hippies and shit. It was all world peace. And then they got their family's estate and they're like, well, I need to keep all my dollars. You know what I'm saying? So y'all are going to learn that some of these people are not true to this. It makes them feel special to have some type of connection.
Yeah. I think there's some racial solidarity that we as Black, I get that the Black young, what is it? The demographic, that millennial Black voters respect, and assuming that we know inherently better than them, they're not above even being having to be challenged to interrogate some of their why. But I think that what we are missing is potentially a rich opportunity to have an intergenerational come to Jesus, to understand a little bit more about the why, and to influence each other and figure out a common ground. Right. And it might just be that we agree to disagree, because there might be some values misalignment with like how the pragmatism has shaped the things that boomers and some Gen X are willing to concede. And I get that younger people have a very different hand of cards that they are dealing with right now that would make us a little bit more comfortable taking risks. But there is some wisdom in understanding a little bit more about how
things were before you even had the opportunity to talk to white people and have these coalitions with them, right? Yeah. Before you could sit down and have meetings and you know, I mean, it is infuriating. And it's like,
and for the record, I don't agree with them. I don't necessarily agree with some of the hard stances that some of our elders make when it comes to political candidates, but I understand it. And I think that's the distinction.
It too. Yeah. Because it's like, no, Cuomo, I didn't think that he was a good candidate, but I do understand that if the reason for them supporting him was because he has name recognition, other white people will likely vote for him.
And if they want, and they might want a boogie, and they might want a boogeyman on their team. We not saying that man is perfect, but when you have somebody like Trump who's explaining that I want Mom Donnie in there, I'm gonna have fun with him. And the older block might be like, we need a dog. They got their own dog. We need our own dog.
We need a dog.
And not to say he perfect, because he absolutely is all of the things. Anti-black, racist, maybe, allegedly all of the stuff with the sexual misconduct and how he's a bully and how he runs his, but he was effective in some ways to get some things done that were priorities.
Right. He really stood out during the COVID era by stepping out to Trump, which is essentially what we need our politicians to do, because a lot of them are scared.
Backing down. They're scared boots. So you can disagree with the elders, but I think it is a very nasty precedent to be like, and honestly, check your own internalized anti-blackness to assume that it's because they're stupid and they can't actually
or conservative.
They can't hold to conflicting thoughts and actually just their inability to navigate the decisions that they make and the why, and it just be charged to them just having low intelligence and being low readers. I think that's very problematic.
Very problematic and short-sighted, because thanks to them, we still had a stronghold, specifically as Black as a Black voting. Our elders are going out, standing in lines. They are the ones that are poll workers. Like, they do all of this work to keep this right alive.
The unsexy part of democracy.
The unsexy part. And y'all talking about we can skip an election. Mark Lamont Hill,
we're on your ass
as long as
forever.
I'm alive, you will always have one hater. So I can't get with that. I do hope that everybody can support him because he is the Democrat
the nominee.
Elect. And Adams, we already know how he get down. He cannot, we don't need to support him.
At this point, he is absolutely compromised. He is in the pocket of the Trump administration.
Compromised. He's already gone. Okay, they've got him. They probably got some piss tapes on him like they got on Trump. So he's done. But we need to. Again, this goes back to my thing. Violence is not always the answer, but sometimes it is. Some of y'all have not been bopped in your mouths, because I just can't imagine getting up talking about
your granny needs to die, and that's how we gonna get progress.
And that's how we gonna have progress.
Excuse me?
It's like, progress comes with compromise. Y'all don't want to compromise. Y'all think, and I think a lot of that is because you were given things instead of having to work for it or just losing out. Like, people always want to talk about participation trophies, and I usually be holding it down for y'all. Like, nah, it's okay to make kids feel good. They don't have to, everything does not have to be hard for children.
Yeah.
But then y'all do shit like this, like y'all don't understand that there are nuances and different reasons. And just because you only zero in on one thing does not mean that you're correct.
Right.
And instead of, y'all don't show up to events, right? Y'all don't show up to these places where you can have these dialogues with the elders. Y'all, this is the first time that y'all have been engaged. So who are them to be like, well, let's just throw our support behind this guy that, does not have any type. I know he wasn't doing no outreach to the Black community other than the young folks that have rallied behind him.
I don't know how true. I haven't paid that much attention to how his engagement was with elders, like with older Black people. He seemed to have a really well-ran campaign and to have really bridged built clearly a strong coalition. You're right, with Black young people. I'm not sure how much was done with the elders, but I don't want to say he didn't do anything because I'm not really sure. Okay.
Well, okay, that's a little hyperbole, but I don't think that it was enough. Clearly, if they didn't want to vote for him, because they would have, but.
Or maybe they wasn't buying what he was selling. He might have engaged and they've been like, we cool.
That too, because he's Bernie adjacent. And I don't blame people for having a little skepticism, because Bernie keeps losing. And there's a reason that nobody wants to address. Calling people low information and saying that they just don't get it, and you're constantly being sexist. You're telling us it's the class issue. It's not about racism. And like, what are you talking about here, brother? Like, are you, what they got? They got some poppy in the Vermont hills that you losing your fucking mind? Like, nah. So, I can understand being skeptical.
Not you wound up. I love that you, see, this turned from like, you're like, I don't have much to say. And another thing.
Well, I don't. Well, right. Right. I don't have nothing to say. I mean, I hope that he wins because I don't want no more foolish people. Well, shit,
yeah, and
it
honestly,
could be foolish with him in there.
And Chicago is very unique because I'm not a Chicago. I mean,
you
we
a
lifelong
Chicagoans. All
right. Period. But looking at we have Mayor Brandon, who has his own set of challenges as a very progressive big city mayor. It's not been no crystal
stair.
It's not
easy.
And I really hope that people don't turn on Mamdani when he has to build a big tent to get things done in a city with a lot of competing priorities. You can't have this purist test of like, if this man don't do everything like he said he was going to do in the order he said he was going to do it in, the way that I want him to, that's just that's a very childish approach to understanding the feasibility of not just electoral politics, but actually running a city. When I said mayor, I wouldn't want to be mayor of nobody's city. That's a very thankless and hard job. God bless the mayors right now.
A mayor of like a 5,000 person city.
Well, you know what? Speaking of, we're going to transition that right over to, I'm just playing.
Perfect. No. That's great, actually. I'm excited. We have a special surprise. Today, we have our very first male guest on Bridges and Breakdowns.
So for I Love Men, look at her. Introducing a man.
We are introducing a man that some ladies might find easy on the eyes. So if you have not watched us on YouTube, check out the YouTube, subscribe, like, get in the comments or whatever. But we're going to make our first male guest, my college mate, and he's also our friend, which you'll learn more about that in the interview. Our fine nigga of the day, but we're not rating. We're just, we're going to give him that. He gets that. He gets the I Love Men segment. He gets the I Love Men segment. But yeah, and ladies, y'all can rate him, but we won't. Yeah. So if y'all think he's attractive, put it in the comments. Okay, actually, no, don't do that because he might actually see that. I'm just kidding, Miguel. But no. If y'all think he's cute, I know how to get y'all to give me the comments. Don't worry.
That is so funny. Well,
stay tuned.
We're going to transition to the main stage for a wonderful conversation on civic engagement and local politics.
With Maywood's finest.
All right, tune in. See y'all in a little bit. All right. Welcome to the Bridges and Breakdown segment, friends. Over here, we recognize that every generation is at risk of overcorrecting or ignoring the lessons learned from those who came before us and those coming up after us. And we also know that growth requires exploration. So this season, we're getting very real about curiosity and what happens when questions lead to breakthroughs or breakdowns. Today, we are sitting down with one of our incredible guests this season who is out here using their gifts and showing up with curiosity and authenticity in very interesting ways. So without further ado, welcome to the main stage. We have Miguel Jones. Lorryn, who is Miguel?
Miguel is my classmate. We went to undergrad at Illinois State together, but he is currently trustee of the city of Maywood. He's on the city council and he has been since 2019. He is specifically focused on how to intentionally invest in lower income Black and Brown communities without the harmful effects of gentrification and loss of culture. He was born and raised in Maywood, Illinois, and he brings his corporate experience, passion for travel, tourism, and team building skills to his hometown in a way to inspire others and make measurable impacts on the community. Outside of local government and working in the wireless industry as an F&PA, Miguel enjoys spending time with his 6-year-old son, Makai, and exercising and finding new places to eat. He's also Alyzza's frat brother. Yeah. So without further ado, thank you for joining us today, Miguel. It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, so it's good to see you.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's good to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. One of the things we try to do on the main stage and help guests feel a little bit more comfortable is we have a little segment called Break the Ice, Not the Bridge. So I have 2 questions for you. Should we call you Councilman Miguel? Or can we just call you Miguel?
Councilman T.
How would you like to be referred to?
Well, my friends call me Miguel, but you can call me Councilman if you want. Trustee.
Oh, he said we're not friends.
Right, we're not
kidding.
friends. Damn, I just told everybody this is my class. Well, I said classmate.
Well,
so I
was saying my friends call me, so you can call me Miguel. I wanted you to decide where you thought you should be in that.
You know what?
In that bucket.
Maki Dada, we're going to call you Miguel. Okay. All right, so Miguel, we love to break the ice. So I have 2 icebreakers answers. You can pick from whichever one resonates most with you. Try to keep it fun. Try to keep it real light so that you can kind of just ease into the conversation we have. So if your younger self would have ran for office, I'm talking 8-year-old Miguel, what is the first thing you would have tried to change or pass into law, no matter how ridiculous or serious? That's one. Or you can pick this one. Which political figure, dead or alive, would you bring to your family cookout?
American political figure?
No, we talking about, I love that you're thinking bigger, global. We're diaspora.
He's thinking big.
Yes. It don't have to be the American politician.
Right. Well,
So
I'm thinking about what would be the, biggest flex, will it be Nelson Mandela to the barbecue? Will it be Mansa Musa to the barbecue? Garvey? Would probably be, Chairman Fred Hampton.
Okay.
Of course, I gotta throw, Maywood in there. So I would say those would be probably the folks I would invite.
That's your invite list.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
my invite
that.
list. Yeah.
And for chat, I don't know if you're picking up what he's putting down. Those are all Black men, for the record. It sounds like you have a very clear connection to the type of Black power that you would be inviting to your space. You have to answer the same question. You can pick either one. You want to pick a political figure, dead or alive, or what would have been your platform if 8-year-old Lorryn was running for office? I have some ideas about you for that one, but let's hear from the man.
You know what? I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to keep it PC since we have
a dignified, esteemed
guest. Right. I'm going to try to hold back from my normal shenanigans. Let's see. Well, actually, I'm not. I would invite Eric Mays, God rest his soul. I would like him to come to the cookout. I think we would have so much fun. I have a couple of meetings I would like to ask him about, like what happened. The camera cut off right when he was cussing his lady out. How did that end? I have lots of questions for him.
That is so funny. I love your answer. Oh my goodness. Well, I will, we will have quorum and I'll answer that question too, so that we all on the same page. I would personally invite none other than Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. Yes. I'm a big fan. I'm a big stan.
Yes.
There's nothing that she's everything. And yes, we go up for the doll, the esteemed Texas queen. So we can jump right in now that we've broken the ice a little bit. I kind of figure where this is going, and I want to start with the big why for you, Miguel. So we're in an era where burnout is real, trust in systems is low. Why should people, especially young folks, still care about getting involved in local politics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So maybe I can just share a little bit about my story. So, as Lorryn mentioned in my bio, I was born and raised in Maywood. And, quite honestly, I'm not sure if I would be in local government if it wasn't for my hometown. This is in a lot of ways like a passion project for me. And when I think about the Chicagoland area and the west suburbs in particular, I've always thought Maywood was very unique. Our neighbors are very diverse. We have one of the more affluent communities, two communities, to our east, Oak Park and River Forest. We have, 2 communities or 3 communities that are led by, Black mayors in Broadview and Bellwood and Forest Park. And so, we're in a very unique position, being centrally located in between O'Hare and Midway, that I wanted to learn about the economics of not only government, but of communities. So I think that's important just because, when we think about our plight in America, it's one of those things you get what you put in. It still takes a community to raise a child. And so when you think about those, and also because I bought a home and I want my home to be worth more than what I bought it for in about 15, 20 years. So I'm being intentional about impacting the culture, learning the economics, and I don't need to start from scratch. I was born and raised here. So that put me in a unique position to do that. And so how that translates into other people, I think it's about understanding, what they want out of life and what role they want to have in the community. Do you want to own the block? Do you want to, just visit? Do you want to lead in any type of way? Or, what role do you want to have to be? I think that's kind of the first question. How do they see themselves? And then from there, you can kind of figure out, what you want to do. So this was just my path. But I think in general, people figure out their path based on what they wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to impact my community. And so it was really about figuring out the path. It didn't have to be trustee. It could have been Little League baseball coach. It could have been, could have been a, stopping guard. could have been just me.
Wait, I'm laughing like stopping guard. What is that?
The crossing guard?
The crossing guard.
That's what I meant, stopping guard. Yeah.
I'm like, but look, maybe we call them different things in different parts.
I just said stopping guard. People all stop signs. But, anyway, I guess I would just say it's important because the Black and brown community is led by Black and brown people. And so it takes us to lead it. So who's going to do it? And we're at the auntie and uncle age. So it's our time to do it.
We squarely are. We absolutely are squarely the aunties and uncles.
I'm 27. Don't know about y'all.
Wait, were we classmates? Because I'm trying to
I know.
I graduated early.
Oh, did
so
you?
I was very, young.
You know what? That
when
was
you were older.
You're right. No, that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. No, facts.
That's funny because the next question we had was kind of, you already answered it. Like civic engagement really can look like a lot of different things, but it can feel formal and intimidating. But I think you just gave some really great perspective about like what being civically engaged actually looks like in everyday life. But if you want to speak any more about that in particular, I wanted to kind of pose that for you.
Yeah. I would just say, kind of going back to what we learned in elementary school or whatever, I think the part that wasn't told on or wasn't really impressed on us is that we have a responsibility to be civically engaged, not just kind of know the rules and follow the guidelines, but we have a responsibility because that's how communities work. They're mostly volunteer based. You do have some people that are like firefighters and public works people, but generally speaking, it's non-for-profits, it's grassroots organizations, and there's the stakeholders who are the property owners that run the town. It's one of those things like, how do you get civically engaged is really about what you're trying to get out of it. So if you're looking for example, if you're looking for a community that has nice libraries and great schools and clean parks and nice streets, the people in those towns help curate that, right? It's not just the staff that do that, right? You have, I'm forgetting some of these like organizations names, but there's like just several of them that pretty much kind of like lead the charge, whether it be like Little League Baseball, whether it be
like civil society groups.
Yeah,
local community-based organizations.
Even like the parent-teacher stuff at schools.
Yeah, PTO.
All that stuff. Like, if you're not engaged in the community, it's hard to say you're adding value. And I think it's something about just, okay, how are we adding value where it's selfless, right? Where we don't necessarily get anything directly out of it. Because if my motto is if everyone does a little, no one has to do a lot. And what happens in our communities, a lot of people have to do a lot of lifting and they get worn out. And so how I don't get worn out is I delegate. I don't do everything on my own.
And it wouldn't be wise for you to try to do everything on your own.
And because that's not engagement anyway, right? That's not civic engagement. You have to, and when I say delegate, I mean empower. Maybe I should use a better word. I empower people to understand that this is their community as well. And so everyone has a part. Some people, they just, even the people that go out every day and just clean up trash in the front of their yard and on the street, like that matters, right?
Yeah.
So it's just important because, okay, I'll put it this way. We also create a culture. In certain parks in Chicago, and I'm not a Chicago person, so forgive me. Like, let's say like, if you're in like the Bridgeview, Beverly, if you're driving down 95th in Harlem, right? People automatically know you don't speed, right? There's certain areas, in the west suburb is Manheim. Certain areas people understand that community don't play that. And unfortunately, we've gotten the brand where we play all that, right? Actually, some people get loose when they get in our town, right? Like, that's when the seatbelts come off, when that's when the loud music comes off, that's when they throw the trash out. But when in the other communities, it's seatbelt, extend the two, it's put the weed down, it's everything, right?
Yeah.
But that's because that took years of culture and kind of creating those things. So civic engagement ultimately helps you define what you want your brand to be. And I'm just trying to help
the brand of Maywood.
The brand of Maywood. Yeah.
An exceptional one. Meaning like we can also think there's an interesting connection between when people talk about gentrification versus community improvement, right? Because there's something to be said about a community improving does not mean necessarily displacement, right? Like Black people also deserve nice things. So it's not either or. It's not, the city is changing or the community is changing. That must mean that what's inevitable is we're about to be displaced. When in actuality and truly, we deserve to have a community of culture where the norm is all of these exceptional things that you've just described as what happens when you go to other communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we deserve an upper middle class community, right? Where we're unapologetic about that. other communities have it, where even amongst themselves, there's just not from a classism perspective, but from, again, our homes is where our wealth is, right? A lot of our wealth is parked. So we can't play
around
with
this country,
that,
especially.
right?
Yes, that is typically where
like that's a safety. That's where my, if you have a husband, wife, kids, parents, like, this needs to be safe. This needs to be secure. Now, I think there's two dynamics here. And I'm glad you brought up gentrification. I think there's a connotation that, going back to the improvement, I guess I'll put it this way. I think the Black and brown community have to gentrify our own communities. I'll put it that way. Gentrification normally is from how I think we interpret it, or how I interpret it, is from like outsiders coming in and buying property, increasing the value, where people that have currently there can't afford to maintain and live there anymore. I think there's an approach where people are doing it more gradually and more sustainably, but you are looking to increase the value because everyone buys homes with the idea that it'll be worth more later on down the line. So I think it's coupled with that idea, but you got to park that idea. I think there's this other idea of folks that can't afford homes and that are like lower income. And so I think that's where you also need to have adequate housing in general that are affordable. And so how does that work? And that's typically where the community that's doing well ultimately subsidizes the individuals that kind of, that need the help with this idea that eventually, they eventually own and et cetera. But depending on your community dynamic is you set up how much you want in there. So I believe the state mandates that each community has to have at least 10% of their land usage be designated as
for low income.
For low mixed income housing? Or mixed housing, or it needs to be affordable, right? Because the idea is that like that's how you essentially prevent ghettos. Because otherwise you'll just have communities that are just, I shouldn't say ghetto because you just assume that not all poor people are ghetto, but I'm just saying that's how you prevent.
Oh no, the ghetto is that is a real land term. Like that is an urban planning term. Yeah. We understand that you don't mean like you're not assigning characteristic or values of people's behavior. Right. You're just describing like an actual, that's a definition, unfortunately.
But there are, where I think the challenge is, in terms of Black America, our spending power. That's where I think if we're being intentional about the investments that we're doing and also making the decision that we want to live together. I don't know if we've made that decision yet. We kind of have, our generation, right? That's what we want to do, and we want to curate that. And I only say that from my experience. My generation that I grew up with, I went to grammar school with, they don't live in Maywood anymore, right? So I'm not saying that off like speculation. A lot of people, that live in the city, a lot of my friends, they don't live in their communities where they grew up anymore. And that's fine, but there's something to say about that when we talk about gentrification. You're creating a very vulnerable community, right? Because what are your grandparents and your mom do?
Yeah, you're describing like brain drain. Right.
Yeah, it's essentially, and I would say, we could also, and I'll wrap it up with this, we can use the models of what happens in, let's say, Chinatown. Have you ever tried to buy a home in Chinatown?
No.
Well, even if you wanted to, it's impossible. You can't, right? If you are, even certain places, you'd be very hard pressed. Ukraine Village or certain areas, like some of these areas, if you tried to buy property, you'd be very hard pressed. And it's not because you can't, it's because it's set up to where you're not really, supposed to be another, Ukrainian person or the Chinese person. So Black is really supposed to be like my daughter or somebody from the block. Like you're not supposed to sell your home to.
You explain that, because I was going to push back a little bit when you were saying we need to gentrify our own communities, because I definitely think that the distinction between what gentrification, a tenet of gentrification, is displacement. And your point is, if you are a product of Maywood and you went away to college, you have fortified yourself, you've gotten all this education, all these experiences, you've now returned to your community technically in like a higher socioeconomic class, and you have, a different level of educational attainment, and your income is probably higher than what you potentially were as a kid. And you are not, I'm pushing back because you're not displacing anybody by reclaiming your community. And I think that's the distinction that I kind of push back when people talk about gentrifying the block. I think I get what you're saying, and I get what the spirit of it is.
Reinvesting,
and that's what it is. Yes, yes. And I think that's different than you having lost all the cultural cachet of your community. You're enriching it because who better than you to be back on the council to actually improve the material conditions of your people.
Right, exactly. And I'm being intentional about like investing it, right? Like for instance, I purchased my childhood home.
Wow.
That's
a flex. That's cool.
Yeah. But my mom didn't own it. We had a landlord, a church. Quick story. I went to church. My grandmother took me and my siblings to church. We were I lived in the Austin community, Forest Park, and Maywood for pretty much most of my life, and we would kind of, pretty much live where we can get affordable housing and decent schooling. And so somebody from our church had this 2-unit building in Maywood that we moved into when I was like in 8th grade or 9th grade. And then fast forward, I graduated from college, I moved back. The landlord passes away, and so he put his property into a trust, which is a whole nother thing we should talk about, trust and life insurance, how that could single-handedly save the Black community.
We might have to have you come back as the financial, like you might have to put your financial analyst hat on to come back to the show, but we're going to keep it back to, and even estate planning, because you're a father and there are things that you now want to consider, as you're playing stuff. But continue, please go ahead.
So anyway, so the father passed away, his property was put into his trust. The siblings of the landlord split the properties, but he left a couple notes for a few tenants. And he said if they have an opportunity, if they can buy it, allow them to buy it. So my mom was one of those tenants. She liked the fact that she kept her boys straight and kept her unit clean. And so my mom couldn't afford to buy it. And so I had just moved. I was probably 20. I think I was 28. And my credit was mid, and I figured it out. I figured it out and I ended up buying it. And it was like the best decision of my life. And I've remodeled the property. And it's one of those things that now, I own it. It's in the family now. I've invested in this block. So not only did my property value go up, but now my neighbor's property values went up. Now their properties went up, property taxes went up a little bit too, but that's okay because they can always sell or whatever. But my point is that's what I mean. And that's not something that's unusual. Like a lot of these, communities that we go to, like when people talk about old money, it's not just because they have, it's because that home has been passed down from generation to generation and there's no mortgage on it anymore. And so they're just sitting on it. And I think, that has been our plight for a while, coming from the South, coming to, the Midwest or whatever. We did that. And I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit of what we were trying to do when we kind of, migrated up here.
And that's by design, like structurally and systemically, there are reasons why, but you're right in that there are also strategies that we can enact to redirect and to improve our own conditions for ourselves. But absolutely. Lolo, I want to give you the transition to make the next question because I feel like I've been my takeover spirit. I'm just here asking.
But you know what? It's good. I've enjoyed y'all conversation. And I had a lot of the same questions and some of the things, because I was definitely going to push back about gentrification. I think I hear a lot about like we need to gentrify the block, and I don't like that term because reinvestment would be, I think, a better statement,
like a brand. That's the brand,
right? Like the brand is like reinvesting. Right. We want people to stay here. We want you to have these things. We don't want you to leave, and we want to not keep people out, but you know what I mean. Like we don't want people to come here, change the culture, and the only way we can do that is if we give people a reason to stay here. Like where I grew up in Matson, I mean, I don't go back there as much. I mean, I visit some of my friends that like stayed here in Chicago. A lot of them live out there or in the general area. So I do get a chance to come back, but a lot of the businesses and grocery stores and things that we had as a child are gone. So, I mean, granted, I don't have any children, so there is no real reason for me to go back there. I think if I had kids, I might maybe. But also for me, I mean, I like Forest Park. I've been here, like 3 years now.
Oh, is that where you are? You're like my neighbor.
Yeah. I am. Wow. That's why I usually chat. I ask Miguel like once a year. We don't talk that much, okay? But I usually ask you about Maywood Fest. Why do you think I would ask you about Maywood Fest if I didn't live nearby?
Being a good friend.
I just was
wanted
like,
to know. Yeah, well, I didn't know. I'm right next door. I might swing by. You didn't leave. You didn't. I think you missed that part of it.
All right. We'll talk about that later. And I would like to. So I'm trying to get myself more into the community because although I don't think I'm going back to Matson even though I'm one of Matson's finest and maybe one day, but I do want to get involved within the community that I'm in now because unless my brother and my mother and all of them leave, this will probably be where I'm at for a while because I want to stay nearby my fam. So yeah. And I tried to be a stopping guard, but actually no, I think I tried right, but whatever. But I think they have well, I'm trying to say this in a buttoned up way, but basically they test you for weed, and we already know your girl is done for in that one.
You know what? Let me give you a DC side quest. There's the crossing guard that I drive by every day to drop my child off to school, and she just got picked up on conspiracy charges. She was like moving big weight.
Oh my
I was like, what a great, perfect job to have, because you're literally in the middle of the street all day. Nobody is like clocking you, thinking about
that's
it being
hilarious.
suspicious.
It's not funny, but that's hilarious.
Guard just got picked up because she was like fucking a narco. It was very.
That's crazy.
DC we're a very unserious place. Yeah,
I love DC.
So it was just funny you talking about the crossing guard. You got to be clean, and I'm like, not here, child, not here.
Yeah, shoot. Because I wanted to do story time at the library. But anyway, to jump back into our questions. So on this show, we like to talk about the bridge generation. Us being millennials, we have an opportunity to we had summers with our elders that are boomers and silent generation, but we're also still young enough to connect with, Gen Z and understand Gen Alpha. So we're able to transfer the wisdom, but then, from both sides.
Right.
We can all learn from each other.
Yeah. Sure.
And so with that, we're trying to integrate the wisdom of our elders with the urgency of our younger voices. And so we want to know, what does that look like when it comes to leadership and power in politics?
Yeah, wow. So politics is an interesting arena, and maybe I'll break it down because, I'm in the local space. From a local perspective, I think it's more so about us looking to, kind of figure out how we're going to get involved. And I think coming to it in a way that it's just like with humility and deference, but also looking to eventually take charge, take lead, and what I was gonna say when I talk about civic engagement in general, I even think being a part of a sorority or a fraternity in a lot of ways contributes to that too.
Absolutely. Historically, that was
part
of our reason for existing.
You don't have to go home, as well. So you don't have to I need to go home back to my room. That doesn't necessarily mean that, because as long as you're contributing positively. But so I would say, I think we have to step up. When I say we, the millennials have to step up and volunteer for these roles, right? And learn about them. And come with the spirit to learn and then to lead, right? Servant leadership is always good. And because we're coming with a lot of change, and the older generation in a lot of ways fears what we were talking about in that gentrification conversation, is that we're going to be losing a lot of the culture because we just like to move so fast. We're kind of like the microwave era to them, is what I'm picking up on.
Yeah.
And so I think it's about trying to build those bridges there organically. At the national level, we're starting to see it a little bit. This has been a point of contention, and particularly for Democrats for a while. A lot of people want to die in office, or, some people, for whatever reason. And I think it comes from a good place because there's so much work to be done that they don't want to let go, because there's so much work to be done. But in a lot of ways, I also think it's because they don't have trust in that we're prepared.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
So which I don't think they look at as a failure on their part, because if you're not mentoring the people to come behind you, you're not doing your full charter. Like, that's what your job is.
Yeah. Well, so going back to the federal perspective, now there is this thing called tenure, right? So, there's folks that get into office, and especially when it comes to certain committees, the longer you're around, you get tenure. And so there is this idea of when new folks get in, that they lose a lot of that seniority. In particular, like in my area, there's like folks like Danny Davis, for instance. Dick Durbin, who just recently announced that he's not going to be running for... he
been senator our whole cognitive lives. As long as I can remember, as an Illinois child, Dick Durbin has been our senator.
I agree. And so, I think part of it has to do with the balance of understanding the importance of having folks that have been there for a while and how they have a certain respect. The same way when you go into an organization, the folks that have been there for a while just know a lot. But there is this balance of having fresh folks in place. And so I think it's about building that bridge that I was referring to. I also think politically we can get involved to set parameters. For instance, term limits. We've seen that at the local level. That works, right? Like, now, granted, you don't want to restrict people maybe to one term, because that's a short period of time, right?
To make any change.
After about 2 or 3, because I guess as you're working, you also need to be figuring out how you're going to be handing off in conjunction with
succession planning.
And succession planning, essentially. And that's not normally a part of it, because I think in politics, it's not, usually by the time someone wants to vote you out, they don't want to secede your plan. They want to throw it away. And so a lot of times there wouldn't be much of a promise to say, oh, I'm going to do what this person does, because otherwise they would just keep reelecting that person, right? So there's also this, it's different than, like, the dynamics of it are different. And then not to mention the, it's a great lifestyle, you get great benefits, etc. at the national level. So I think how we transition is just, simply looking to build those relationships and being intentional about it. And we do have a challenge, or we do have the opportunity, because we are closer to that the generation that's kind of like after us. I don't know what gen they are.
Gen Z. So Gen Z is actually the generation right after us. And then Gen Alpha is like your son is Gen Alpha.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, Gen Alphas. But yeah, Gen Z, I mean, that's a challenging group.
They've had they have their first representative. We are speaking both in like local politics and national politics. But Gen Z actually elected their first congressperson, I want to say in 2024, maybe? No, 2022, I think. 2022, as I think when that young man from Florida, he was like it was a black man, actually. I can't remember his name. We can fact check later and put his name in. But yeah, it is definitely a changing of the guard. And I think we saw that in even 2024. But I did pull up some stats that I had in the parking lot for us, is that Gen Z and millennial voters are on their way to becoming the majority of the voting population by 2028. So as of 2028, we'll account for roughly 50% of the voting eligible populace. And in 2026, Gen Z will become the first majority non-white generation. So those two things have a lot of power in terms of what we're looking at, both nationally and locally, right? Like what that looks like for the political landscape. There was some studies that I pulled that 2 new studies offer a deeply detailed look at the social values and political behaviors of voters age 18 to 43. So that's Gen Z and millennials. And some findings diverge sharply from some prevailing stereotypes about the behavior of this voting bloc. So surprisingly, Gen Z and millennial voters across the political spectrum are converging towards agreement on key issues. But the researchers found and this is from the Berkeley Institute of Young Americans reporting this, that a substantial generation gap in American politics. Both young liberals and young conservatives want effective government action to solve challenges. So a lot of government involvement, while their parents and grandparents have been in conflict for over half a century of like minimizing the role of government, or at least, debating about the role of government. Right.
Because can't tell by this current administration that was all small government.
But at the same time, young voters appear to share this belief that a fractured, dysfunctional government system is incapable of addressing critical challenges that fall heavily on their generation. So there's this sense of fatalism extending across the right, the center, and the left, according to researchers. And I definitely think that has to make sense both locally and nationally. And you kind of pointed it out. Sometimes people can think that change only happens in DC or through huge national movements. But I want you to give some examples, Miguel, around how local politics is capable of changing lives and communities in ways that people may not realize.
Yeah. So at the local level, so really just when we think about government in general, all government is typically local, meaning that even federal resources, the point of it is to support the local, citizens.
We are United States.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, whether it be social services or, even national security or whatever, it makes all with the mindset is that, it kind of trickles down. But to be specific, when we think about communities, police and fire, public works, parks, schools, libraries, and how in your infrastructure, water at the local level is managed by your local government and is funded by either your property taxes or sales taxes or, some sort of combination of revenue. And so when you know that, essentially when you're a stakeholder, if you're a property owner or if you're a voter, you're a stakeholder in the community. And so you kind of have a voice in terms of how we allocate those resources and what is the priority. And so, I think in terms of like how that can impact us locally, I think when I think about just the Black plight in general, I think we've had great success locally. Sometimes we've gotten attacked, but we've had some great success locally. I think when our movements become national is when we start drawing certain attentions. I even think about like Chairman Fred Hampton and how he kind of got how he got the attention of J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO and all that stuff. And what happened back then is we kind of had to be loud because these movements, need to be loud because it was old school, right? You didn't have cell phones and text messages or whatever. And I think we need to be a little bit more strategic and cohort now in terms of how we're creating communities to ultimately benefit us. When I say us, Black and brown people, because other communities have figured out to do it. When I say other ethnic groups have figured out how to create communities that work for them. And when I say that, like they have, there's local business owners. And
just how the dollar is circulated within a community.
It's circulated,
right? Right.
It's staying in. People also, they have a reason for people to visit and spend money. Outsiders. And that's important too, because the topic of, especially in the Black community, the topic of like grocery stores, for instance, or access to fresh produce or other things, like those things now take regional effort to support. Like there aren't too many like the Jewels and Whole Foods. It's usually not like just that community that's supporting it and that's why it's sustainable. It's everyone's coming to visit, to shop there or whatever. And I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to isolate ourselves. We also have to be attractive to other folks in terms of like they want to come and spend money in our community. So it's not all on our backs. It's not just property tax and us having to foot the burden. And so I think we do that through branding and tourism. I like to, so for instance, let me talk about Maywood. Like Maywood, for instance, if I'm branding Maywood about what you could do, about how you could come. So I would say, Maywood is a beautiful riverfront community in the west suburbs of Chicago. That's 5 miles from an international airport and a domestic airport in Chicago, right off 290. Not only are we home of, we probably have the most professional athletes to come from the area, and particularly from Maywood. We also have a lot of folks in the music and sciences. We also have history. For instance, if you're into tourism and Black history, Maywood's one of the few places that has a Black museum, Operation Uplift. We also have an Underground Railroad sighting on Lake and Chicago Avenue. And there's a bunch of things to see and to visit and to, shop around. We have, a few restaurants and, a couple other places you can come, catch a vibe, have a drink if you do cigars. So we got a little bit of everything. We're a diverse community and a growing, safer community. So that's how I would pitch it and want to brand ourselves,
I mean, that answers the question.
Yeah, and they have a very nice library.
Oh, really? You've been to our library?
I have. I voted at the library, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think, I voted. Yeah. It's very nice. So
thank you.
Everything you've described honestly reflects that local politics indeed probably are more instrumental and more consequential to your daily life than what happens at the national level.
Absolutely.
Because everything you just described is like daily quality of life things. How far you have to go to take a walk safely, right? With your kids. How far you have to go for your babies to be educated in a quality school that's safe. How far you have to go to get a fresh cucumber. Right? Like those are all things that at the local level you have influence and you're empowered as a constituent to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which was also why, because we have like a plan of what we wanted to do for the season. But I remember like after we had talked about it, I came back like, no, we should do something about local politics because I am very, very passionate about millennials specifically. It's time.
Yeah.
We can't just, I feel like, I don't think all millennials have Peter Pan syndrome, but I do think
childish as hell. Don't nobody want to grow up.
I am 27, but I still take on a lot of responsibility for myself, my community. Yes, I always have been. Very old soul. And I see the value in investing, no matter where you are, even if it's not your hometown, but it's where you live.
Yeah.
And
that's where community is, really.
Yeah. And given that we are like the last generation that grew up pre-internet and like know what it means to build community outside of phones and, have
to touch
some
grass.
social decency, right? And like common and decorum. We have to be that cohort that is trying to impart that wisdom on the younger ones because they have lost some recipes. They are very techie, and I think that they are a very interesting generation, but there's quite a bit that they can learn. And I think this last election has made them a little apathetic. Also, with being on the internet, they are easily targeted by misinformation campaigns and don't always recognize like you're getting duped.
It's an apathy and a fatalism. I think a lot of it is it's both and. It's like either I can't do anything and I'm not empowered at all to influence my reality, which is a very dangerous place to have a generation of kids in. Yes. That's a very unsafe and unhinged. I mean, I can understand the why, but we as a population, as a community, cannot maintain that level of my life is going to suck either way. So I might as well. It's like, fuck it. No, that's dangerous. We can't have an entire generation of people feeling that way, that everything is going to go to hell and there will be no more planet for us to even inhabit. So I don't have to think about the future because I can't even see what a healthy, safe, exciting future would even look like.
But if you're constantly getting those messages through your friend group, on your TikToks, your Discord,
feedback loop.
It's right. And so then an echo chamber. And it's scary. So, I mean, that is also kind of like somebody, I won't say who, called me a fascist because if I was president, I would be turning off the internet for children. Like after a certain time, like y'all just need to go figure out. I did so much. I know a lot of words because my mother made me read the dictionary. And so it's just like
No, I don't even think that's a hot take. I absolutely think that if the earth is still standing and if this republic is still strong as the United States 100 years from now, when they look back and understand that we let children be on the internet, it'll be the exact same as when we look back and that we used to let children smoke cigarettes. I think it'll be the same.
Or work in factories and lose fingers and shit. Yeah.
Right. It'll be the exact same disgust. And like, how did that society think that was appropriate for 6-year-olds? I don't think that's a hot take, friend. I think that's very grounded in evidence for you to say that the babies don't need to be online.
Yes, but I do think that there are quite a few parents that, at least that I've come across, not necessarily guys, because you all, obviously are very invested, but they, it's how they are able to, because they want to be on their phones too. So if their kids could, be entertained, then it's like a win-win. But they're also, just from being, a teacher for that little bit of time that I was, I used to have to deal with fights and issues that they had after school on the internet, and it's like, why are y'all even on there? And so that scares me, which is so I would like for us to get involved in local politics, but then also do things that bring people outside of their homes, off their phones, because collectively as a community we need to touch grass.
It makes me want to ask you a follow-up, Miguel. What's something that the older generation of political leadership got right? And what's something that you think we need to lovingly retire?
Yeah. So outside of like the politicians, because I'm not quite sure how they maneuvered per se. I do know there were, a few that were beloved, like the Harold Washingtons and stuff. But
side note. Oh, okay. No, I'll put a pin in it. Don't let me forget.
Okay. I'll remember the side note.
Okay, wait. Okay, well, I might as well just say since I broke it up. I used to think Harold Washington was my granddaddy.
You did tell me that. Because every Black Chicagoan has a picture of him in their granny's living room. I can understand why you...
And I never, and my grandfather had died when my dad was 9. And so I just thought like, this is my granddad. This is what he looked like.
And DC, that's our Marion Barry. That's the equivalent of Harold Washington is to Chicago, who Marion Barry is to DC. But continue, Miguel.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Fun fact.
For sure. And, I guess what I would say is things that the Black community got right. I would say one, and I don't know if you guys heard this before, there used to be this dynamic where like if kids, depending on if they were on different blocks, like this idea that somebody else could give you a whooping if you were acting up on that other block.
Yes.
I think because, you have brought up this thing like, people would be tripping if they thought that you could do like there'd be a society that'd be, wait, y'all just letting kids fool around outside y'all house like that? Y'all haven't said anything. And so that's one thing that we got right. and particularly the men, but people in general, the men have to take responsibility of, and I take responsibility of, not that I'm out here about to be confronting some YNs.
I'm about to say, not you get not
putting belt to ass.
No, but hey, but you know what? You might see me on TMZ straight. I will. That's one of the reasons why I work out, just in case I got to make it real for one of them. But no, I do say there is this element of like, you know, I'm outside and they see me, right? Like, this ain't your block, this is my block. Like, you're not gonna rush me, y'all. So it's about having a presence, right? It's about looking at it like how an uncle would look at you, like, and people actually move, right? Or they figure out how to do it. So there's a presence that we have to kind of have on our communities and on our blocks that comes from home ownership, and that comes from, I paid this area. Like, you don't do
and
that.
Pride and responsibility of like, this is ours. This is collectively our ownership.
And, you know, one thing I've noticed about, you know, older people, and generally, I feel like, well, especially Black women, they're not scared of nothing. You like, I feel like there's like a certain thing, like you can't intimidate them in that situation. Now, generally, like these kids are disrespectful enough to be confrontational. But I guess what I'm saying is like, there is a certain element of they weren't afraid or aren't afraid to be the adults in the room, right? And make you feel uncomfortable. And I think we have to remember that we're now the adults in the room. And as a parent, you have to remind your kid of that sometimes. And that's tough as an adult, because that takes courage, right? But you have to believe in that. And that's something that if you don't have that in a community, if there's no structure, if there's no hierarchy, if there's no, you're a child and I'm an adult, if that's not a thing, then it's not going to be a thing. So I think that's one thing that they got right. And just deference in general. I think we learned this in sororities, fraternities. Like there is this idea of like, neophytes, pro-fights, you know, there's a chapter president or whatever gets a certain level of just respect. You also learn that like democracy, I might need to earn some votes on stuff. I might need to, you know, I learn how to just work as a community and understand like I got to pitch some ideas. I got to get consensus. I got to, you know, like give a little, you know what I'm saying? And I think those type of things, the community leaders got right.
I got you.
You know, and there's things that they, you know, got wrong. But I think those are the core things, the core, like, take away the internet. Let's talk about adults. Let's talk about kids. And kids are in school. Like, for instance, if you're a kid and you outside and it's after 8:30, that's a problem. You can't walk around this block. Some adult would have walked you into school. Like, or that's like, they're just a zero tolerance for a kid not acting like a kid. You know, and that
comes from, I think what's implicit there that we're not saying is you have to actually know your neighbors to have that level of trust and respect, because there's a mutual, it's a social contract. You're not going to run up on a stranger's kid, right? No. And that's the difference. I think a lot of it, the erosion of our connections have been around not even being neighborly,
knowing your neighbor,
and not knowing our neighbors, not being in community. I think our generation can be a little bit individualistic at times. I think that's a fair criticism of us, being very focused on ourselves and not wanting to. Community requires a lot of selfless sacrifice, and it's not always going to be reciprocity. So even as a single childless person, I always encourage people who like are in community with me, like show up to the band concert at the local elementary school. Like not to be a creep. I'm not talking about all like the kid related things, but like showing up for kids in community, showing up for events that are happening in community is a part of what it doesn't always have to be something that serves you. Sometimes you have to be the one actually showing up to be a good community member, right? Exactly, and I think that can be something, all of what you described can't happen if you are not someone who is actually in connection with everyone else in your community. And
that kind of ties back to what I was saying about just, this is unique for me because this is my hometown. So I didn't have to start over, and like these my neighbors I've known, like they seen me since high school. They know you
since you was Lil Miguel.
For real, right? So I've kind of stepped into this role, and I've in a lot of ways earned it. And I've kind of taken the lead, and they've also empowered me to do that. So I also know my neighbor, which is kind of rare sometimes nowadays, right? Which is wild, right? Could you imagine not knowing who your neighbor is? Like, that's nuts.
We had block parties, like it was just, and now you're right, we are the adults. We're the ones who now are responsible for brokering that. And I think that's something we have to step up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, because if this was at your job, that'd be unprofessional, right? Like if you sat next to someone and just didn't talk to them, like you just kept walking past them, like And so that was one thing. And other thing I wanted to add to you, in terms of the Black culture, where sometimes we mix in street code with our culture. So
say more.
So for instance, there's always been this idea of like minding your business in the Black community, because people were doing stuff that they didn't have business, that they didn't have business doing, and so you didn't want to get like involved in it or telling the police or whatever. But in communities, in so many ways, when it comes to neighbors, et cetera, they should be in your business a little bit. And when I say that, I mean that, for instance, like, what type of cars do you drive? Who are your children? Who's kind of coming in and out your house? Like, not that they need to know what your guys are doing, but there's a safety thing going on there. There's a
not for the purpose of gossiping, like, you ain't heard that from me,
right?
But like, there used to be a time where, let's say, if you were running out somewhere, you'd have your neighbor watch your house, right? You'd be like, hey, I'm going somewhere. You know, if you see anything funny, like, that would be a thing. Or in communities like Lorryn, you might notice if you ever drive in River Forest at night, if you notice after about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you won't see one car on the street. Not one, zero.
Except for mine.
They all have driveways, et cetera. But it's also a safety issue because it's very easy for police to point out an outsider. Like, because after a certain amount of time, these are really called like bedroom communities. Like, after a certain amount of time, you're not kicking in these communities. Like, either you live here or you're a guest of someone. Right. And so the nosy part is like a neighbor, everyone's looking outside at a certain time, whose car is on the street. It's like, this is a culture. And if so I might say, okay, that's John's across the street, or that's Lauren's, you know, whatever. So we'll leave it alone. Or they might say, hey, did you call your car in? Or are you going to leave it on the street? Like, that's what they be on with their neighbors. Yeah. Or if there's a car that's out there, they're already, like, I guess that's community policing. And I don't know how you community police if you don't have a relationship with the community. So
you got the sign.
Right?
That says, we call police here.
I don't have that sign. I just pop out.
He said, I am the police now.
And not to be, I'm not a tough guy. Trust me. I'm like not a tough guy at all. But I play one on TV.
I heard you was Miguel, goddamn. I heard that you.
Yeah. I play one on TV.
Maybe?
There was a time.
Once upon a time.
Okay.
But, you know.
I love that. You're grown up now. You have adult responsibilities.
But what I'm hearing is that Miguel wants to bring back community hazing. And I can get with it a little bit, you know.
Hazing is probably how y'all feel about the word gentrification. It has a negative connotation. You know, it's more about when I'll put it this way. In the Bible, it says something about if you spare the rod, you know, you spoil the. So it's more about.
Okay.
Some people call it hate.
Okay.
But that Bible scripture is about correction. And the rod is not used to actually beat the sheep or the child. It's actually used to guide and to direct. So I'm with you. When it comes to...
Well, that's why I said hazing. I mean, hazing's illegal. You're not supposed to haze, right? So I'm being textually right.
Yeah, I don't think that you're saying that we should haze the community. That's Lorryn being messy.
Right. No, but I do think there needs to be a slight culture of fear when an adult come outside.
As I said.
There's a little ounce of fear that I have of still my dad and my mom. Like,
it's a healthy fear.
It's a respect fear. It's a very ultimate respect. The same thing we have a fear of. It's a very healthy respect of, I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to, you know, like, you know, I carry my dad's last name. You know, I don't want to disrespect them. Like, there's a certain and also to the point where, like, a neighbor should be able to check you. I do think when you're talking about how. Because we also have to be very honest about our community and our kids. You know, like, and Lorryn, you know this about our schools. We're all like different flowers. Some people need more water than others. Some of these young kids need more guidance than others because also, like, once you get past 5 or 6, they're starting to get molded. Like, it's one of those things where, you know, you're either going to go right or left. And I'm of the mindset, not everyone needs tough love, like I said, but there are certain times where, that's exactly what they need, right? And we can't, and I don't mean beat them, right? I don't mean... you know, physical.
Of course not.
No, that means being harsh, right? I mean, that means being very clear. Like, you know, I played football before. You know, I played basketball before. You learn that from a coach. A coach some people call that hazing, right? You get on the line. You're going to run until you throw up.
It's tough love.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they'll make you run until you can't feel your legs. And that's, man, you know, depending on certain age of parents, they'll be pulling their kid out the team. Like, nah, you can't do it. Where it's like, nah.
Kid might run home like me.
Let it happen. It's okay. It's tough love. Yeah, it don't always look or sound
off the track. I was like, I'm going home, bitches.
Yes, but yes.
No more of this for me.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Cool.
However honest you want to be about this one, but just a mistake. You know, mistakes are part of learning and a part of being curious and having ideas and being a creative problem solver. Is there, you know, a mistake or learning curve you faced in public office as a millennial that changed how you lead?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. Yes. You know, I would say in politics, in a lot of ways, I went into it thinking just like the best ideas win. And that was naive of me to think that, or that plagiarism wasn't a thing, people copy and steal your ideas. And there's just other things that happen that, and also, you know, I've also noticed too, like you also support, especially in this type of situation, in my dynamic, I don't just support the people that voted for me. I also have to support.
Yeah, you represent everybody.
Right.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Even the people that don't agree with me, even the people that don't want to be involved, don't want to be engaged, you know, that really are kind of counter to what I'm trying to do. I still represent them too. And so I guess I've made some mistakes in either sometimes just bringing an idea up front and not doing enough homework to make sure I had the support for it. Thinking I could just kind of go off the merits and whatever.
You didn't whip the votes up before you.
No, and that's in politics. That's a little bit of a rookie mistake. You should know that you're going to go in and you have the support in order to do that. So that was one thing. And then I think the last thing I would say is I've learned not to take things personal. I have a tendency to take things personal. That's one of my flaws and one of my weaknesses. I can be petty. That's
interesting.
You know,
I guess it means you really care. If you can't just like separate the personal from the professional in this line of work, it's probably because the lines are blurred for you. Like you really are in this for the right reasons.
Oh yeah, I'm not in it for the money. You know, I'm kind of just, you know, I'm in it to learn, and I'm in it to leave the community better than I found it. And so if I feel like there's some folks, whether it be, especially intentionally, trying to get in my way, you know, I take that more than just like, oh, just a difference. Like, you know, it's, you know, it might be in my heart. It's like, oh, it's beef a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm doing God's work, and you try to stop me.
Hey, it's difficult to like. It's like, what do you? It's like I don't have to. You know, sometimes you catch an attitude in a way that's not necessarily fair to the process. Like, you know, you have to allow people to disagree with you. You have to allow people to challenge you, to critique you. I mean, I need to, you know, develop my tough skin because, you know, like that's a part of it.
Yeah, and be open to an alternative. Because I don't know the example you were referencing, like right in your head, but I cannot assume that person might not have also had their own way that they thought was the best approach to get whatever the end goal was. And it might not always be that this person is trying to derail your plan. They might just have one that is different. But politics is messy. That person also could have just been trying to derail your plan for some mess.
Yeah. Well, you know, politics. Yeah, politics is very similar to like any other organization. I would use like, you know, chapter, you know, fraternities and sororities. You know, like how that politics depend. I mean, most local chapters, like people are cool enough.
Everything, though.
It's politics and everything, but usually
like
maybe
little
the
P
alumni.
Politics.
Yeah. Now, low at like the undergrad level, everyone's cool. I mean, you know, for the most part, there's not too much philosophical differences in terms of like, it is not even that deep. At least with us, it was like parties and, you know, there's a few things we voted on. I was like, hey, do we want to throw a party Friday? I like, you know, it was stuff like that.
The ladies of Theta Delta Core did work. Okay.
Yes,
we
you guys did do work. Yes,
Side note, my uncle was one of your charter members, Miguel.
Really? Who's that?
Ted McClain.
Ted McClain, yes. I know who that is. He knows who I am, too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you didn't know that Mr.
No,
McClain
I didn't. I definitely would have put a word in to go extra hard on certain people. Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he chartered.
Oh, my gosh. I love that. He's so cool.
Yeah, he is cool.
Yeah, he's a very fly. He's squarely in his 70s right now.
Oh my gosh, he's so young.
And
he looks good. Yeah.
He is squarely in his 70s right now.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that.
Yeah, but we can definitely redirect and maybe end on the question of if you maybe could design like a civic engagement starter pack for someone who's just tuning into how power works in their city, what would be in it? Just to leave the people with a little breadcrumb trail of where do you even start?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I would start off with just like what is civic engagement, you know, and how you can get involved. And it doesn't need to be, not everyone wants to be a politician or get into local government. Like I would say it does not need to be that. Like if you're into sports, maybe consider, if not being a coach, just showing up to the games and just being intentional about having some spirit, right? Like bring some energy, you know, or maybe you know how to grill, bring your grill out there and say, man, I'm gonna get the hot dogs and the hamburgers for the kids or whatever. So I think going about like where are you naturally kind of inclined to do something where you wouldn't have to be paid and figure out, okay, what can I do just to organically do that? And I would say maybe start off with like, you know, if you could do like maybe a couple, like an hour, you know, every month or two, you know, to say I'm being very intentional about, let me like actually do something.
And there's power in that. It's not all about who is electing and who is actually voting for things.
Right.
As a council member or as an alderman, there's power in just showing up and being intentional.
Just being involved. Because what happens is that's how people meet you and get to know you. And then that's when you speak, it actually means something. Because people say, oh yeah, I know him, right? Versus if you just know
here.
Exactly. Like, you have some skin in the game. Like, I've seen this. I'm not just going off what I heard. Like, I'm actually on the ground. So I think I would kind of present with like a, kind of info. What is civic engagement? How can you get involved? And then from a government perspective, I would just kind of let them understand our particular structure. So I'm a city council person, and then this is how my job is. I'm a policymaker and I pass the budget and I make sure that your tax dollars are being used efficiently and that you're hopefully getting the best return on investment on your dollars. But in terms of contact information, I'd be like, all right, so if there's a fire, if you need police, if your curb is messed up, if the street light is out, here's who you contact, like just kind of like very matter of fact.
So just knowing who represents you locally. Yes. For me, who is your ANC? Who is your alder person? Who is your council member? Yes, council person.
Call? Yep. And then after that, it will just be a random fun facts about what's going on in the town. So events going on. It would also just be about just like fun facts about what our staff is doing. So we do have staff, we have department heads. So they should be able to deliver you all a very concise, half pager on what we're working on. So public works, maybe it's lead water lines. We're improving that. Our water, improvement is increasing. Maybe police department, we've increased our staff so much, or because for instance, like something I want to work on with the police is like the 4th of July, for instance. It gets out of hand, the fireworks, right? Like it's obnoxious. Now, I don't mind fireworks. I'm not trying to be like a party people, but it needs to be like, all right, from this time to this time on this day, you could do it. After that, no, right? I don't want to hear it at 3 o'clock. Like you blowing a half a stick of dynamite at 3 o'clock in the morning is outrageous.
And that's not anti-Black for you to say that, Miguel. I think that people act like loudness is a cultural part of being in a community of Black people. But guess what? Miss Johnson don't want to hear that shit at 3 a.m.
Well,
the dogs don't want to hear that. The babies don't want to hear that.
And maybe in some communities, but in the community that I lead and in Maywood, our residents don't like that, right? So maybe some residents are cool with that, but in the culture that I'm trying to present, I know that senior citizen doesn't like that. I know that veteran that, might have been off at war 20 years ago somewhere in Iraq or something, don't want to hear no damn bombs going off at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because we do have we have a VA hospital. It's like a real thing, like right there on Roosevelt. So there are a lot of veterans that live here. So that's one of those things where I want to like challenge. I want to get the community involved. Look, this needs to be like we should make $50,000 this weekend, collecting fireworks, catching them up. So if they not doing that, but I'm just saying that like that might sound, but that's the type of culture I want to create. I'm that guy. Now, if people want to push back,
real strict.
Run against me, primary me.
I love it.
But I'm just saying, but that's also driven by listening to residents. Yeah, hearing the frustration. I pay too much money in property taxes for them to have their kids out there, boom, 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 all that type of stuff. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? What's my job? So my job is to come up with a solution. Now the community might not like it because I like calling. I guess I'll put it this way. Our community, we have a lot of theories, but we got to challenge it, right? We do a lot of shadow boxing. Everybody's a shadow boxing champ. Like we got to challenge these theories. And when I say that, for instance, like I'm the one to say, all right, bet, no fireworks, period. Outside of this time, period. Because I want to challenge the people that said that, because now we're going to hold people accountable. Y'all say y'all want this community. And that's tough. Now the reaction is that, they don't have to pay a fine and, you have to get tickets and it's tough. The same thing with grocery stores. All right, let's build one. And now you got to shop there. You got to come, you got to keep it clean, right? Or you got to keep people from loitering. You got to do these things like let's build it and then now challenge.
Let's take care of our assets.
And let's take care of our assets and let's say what we want to do. Like if we say we're a suburb, act like a suburb. Like that's what we say we are. It's like sometimes you have to be who you say you are. And so it just really about me saying if we're a suburb, they don't do that. And now some communities do. But the fireworks thing was just one of those things that I know, and I just was thinking about the 4th, where I was like, okay, this could be a challenge, right? Is this something? Or I'm also the mindset, I'll put it this way. It's like I'll throw out a solution. And if you don't want it, then don't come to me about no fireworks no more. That's my attitude. Like, I don't want to hear the complaining no more. Like I came up with a solution. Like, nah, I don't care anymore because I tried to solve it.
We got a consensus build, Miguel. We got to build consensus.
Hey, I'm one of them people like,
is my way or my way.
Hey, it's either my way or y'all figure it out. Y'all haven't figured it out yet. So it's like Either I can give an alternative and then we could figure it out together, right? But I mean, ultimately, it was just about addressing a problem. And are we serious about addressing the problem? And I'll get us there. My job is to get you there and to see if you're serious. It's not to bully anyone, or it's not about saying it's my way, but it's really just about saying the community that we want in order to get there. Yes, you have to do that stuff, right? Like the stuff that we're talking about.
I love this. So we have Chairman Fred Hampton, we have Eric Mays and Barbara Jordan who walk into a cookout with no fireworks. And that is how we are going to end this wonderful. No, I know. Lauren has the last question.
I do have
I was going to give it to you,
question.
Fran. I was going to give it to you. You have a very important question she wants to close this segment with.
I have a very important question.
Okay.
And I've been waiting since we asked you to come on the show. Now, as a council person, are you on the Maywood Fest Entertainment Selection Committee of anything like that?
I'm not anymore. I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
You missed your shot.
Do you have any influence because people know you now?
Yeah, I have a little influence. I could pull some strings potentially, or at least, rub some elbows.
Now, granted, this individual is not Black in the physical sense. But I think you should propose John B. as a headliner, perhaps. As a performer,
What other way is there to be Black, Lauren? You said he's not Black in the physical sense. What other way is there to be Black?
That would be actually a fun. Is John B. not Black at all? Is he 100% Caucasian?
John B.
No.
Jonathan Buck is a white man.
Really?
From the Caucasus Mountains. He has a Black wife and Black children.
He has a very Black wife.
He's a white man.
And he had a fade back in the day. That white boy
He did. But now he got him a little... Yeah, I mean, I think he absolutely loves Black people in like a real way.
In a real way.
Yeah.
No, I like that suggestion.
That is so funny.
Thank you very much.
No, that's a good one. Okay, yeah, let me take that back. And I think John B. is like... I think he
comes here
the area
quite a bit.
Yeah, he does.
But I don't know that he's been in Maywood, and I think he's actually.
That'd be a nice.
Bring him over here west.
Get this. This is a perfect example of how blessed are those who ask the questions, because all you have to do is know who the right person is to submit your petition.
Now,
and
John
Lauren,
B. is at the Maywood Fest. You
got to be there.
It off, right?
Okay.
And Miguel,
y'all have to give me my props.
Oh Lord. I love this.
Yes. Well, yeah. I was going to go back to college, but then I was like, oh, actually, let me stop. Yeah. But I'm going to tell a funny story because me and Miguel, I think during our annual chat this year, it was about the Drake and Kendrick. Well, Kendrick, stomping on Drake. But back in college, had reached out to Drake. He was going to come to campus for $3,000 and a haircut. And I tried to tell niggas, he's going to be him. And they was like, what? Drake from Degrassi? And then we got conned into thinking that another big celebrity was coming. And I had to fix that. But in any event, we could have had Drake. So I say all that to say,
a haircut is crazy.
Crazy work. I talked to him on MySpace.
This is like 2007, 2008.
Yeah, this is
2008, 2009. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He had what was the first one?
Brand
when he
new.
was sounding like Fonte.
So far. He stole that nigga her flow.
Or him and Trey Songz.
What is it?
No,
I mean
new,
that
right?
was around that time, but he had the
Girl.
pea coat. He had the pea coat and the.
Oh yeah.
God damn it, I can't think of it now. But that was when I was like a big Drake fan, and I was talking to him on MySpace. Yep, and it was gonna be 3 stacks and a haircut. Yeah, so far gone. Man. But yes, so I say all that to say I am an excellent entertainment pick. If you need any selections, any suggestions, I know who's gonna be popping.
Okay. I believe that. I believe that too. I know we weren't gonna go down the college lane, but I feel like that used to be one of our topics back in the day. If I remember correctly. So
well, look at everybody now, all grown up and hopefully inspiring.
She's somehow
who's 27.
I'm 27.
I'm
27.
Like
yes,
3 years.
I am eternally 27. Like MC to God.
Mm-hmm. Well, Miguel, we thank you so much for your time, for your effort, you doing the people's work to improve your community. And, God bless you. Good brother.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today. Anything you want to tell the people where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on IG and Facebook on IG _Miguel Jones _ Facebook. I think it's Miguel A. Jones. Yeah, you guys can find me and stay connected. We'd love to, connect with new people and follow y'all journey and support each other.
And if you are a constituent of Miguel's, definitely be on his ass, because that is literally your job.
That is.
Are y'all doing the Tour de Proviso?
Tour de Proviso. Yes, we are.
When is that?
Yeah, so Tour de Proviso is going to be the first Saturday in October. So it's like beginning of, or, late summer, early fall. But that was a bike ride that I started with Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview. And the idea was to kind of use the idea of Tour de France, and France is where they travel around the mountains to, race perspective. But we've used it just as an opportunity to travel different communities and learn about it. This year we'll be in Oak Park River Forest. So I'm excited about that. We're going to be riding around. So the first Saturday of October, we normally start about 9:00. So the Best of Proviso Township is the non-for-profit that leads the bike ride efforts. And so you can register there. Love to have you. And let's get out and ride.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back. We hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Friend to the show, Councilman Miguel. So
Miguel Jones.
That was a really fun conversation. And if you all have any questions for Miguel, we would love for you all to comment, DM us, email us. Bridges and Breakdowns, there we go, at gmail.com. We would love to share a question with our esteemed guests, and you might be the lucky listener to have your question selected, and for Councilman Miguel to respond on our social media platforms. So follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We are there, and we are looking forward to hearing from you.
All right, so y'all know how we like to close out this episode. We like to open the church doors, let everybody come to the front for the benediction. We like to call it PS, please stop, or please start. We're going to talk about anything. Well, actually, now that it's please stop or start, it really is anything. But if it's a stop.
What's on our heart?
It's on our heart. It's what we need to get done ASAP.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, I know you said yours is short.
I mean, I didn't even really have one on my spirit, but I feel like I went off a little bit in the glow and grow. But yeah, I think please stop needs to be, we got to grab these YNs by the collar and explain to them how this is not acceptable. We have to be accountable. Yes, there are things that we socially and structurally, there are ways that we have failed young people and that they're not engaged. And also, we are accountable and responsible for each other. And you see some young boys in your family, in your neighborhood, out here playing a dangerous game. Marion Barry did not die for this. There are too many summer youth employment opportunities here in D.C. for you to be involved actively in this summer. You don't have no business running the street, bopping people upside their head, taking the things that they work very hard for, especially not people in our community. So please stop. A tale as old as time. Get it together. Get out these streets.
Yes.
You only gonna end up in jail or 6 feet under. Or in jail or hell. Right. And then the jail might not even be here no more the way these people are moving. So unless you want to be on what's the Alligator Island?
A cargo ship.
The
Alcatraz.
The new Alcatraz with the moats of alligators with this crazy tyrant. It's not gonna be cute. It's not gonna be fun. Tighten up. Get it together. I'm over it. I'm sick of it. What's your PS? I think you had a positive. Please start.
Yes, but it's a twofer, I think, unfortunately. Okay. So my please start is based on, because we had such a wonderful conversation, please start getting more engaged within your community.
Yes.
And let us know like what you're doing. Realize like I was serious. I am going to probably try to like do some type of volunteering at my library and just try to read to the kids. I really enjoy that. I give like Cree Summers. She's the librarian on Abbott.
Yeah,
that's how I keep the kids engaged that
you're
way.
You're a thespian, so I think that your flair for the dramatics would serve that very well. That's really beautiful.
Yes,
friend.
The kids really love it. And then also on that same side, you're going to have to start bullying your politicians. Because especially, right now it should be all hands on deck specifically for those Republicans that can be turned to vote no on that big bitch ass bill, because it's really that important. I hate to, making a joke about it is bad because it's really important. So run it up, spam them Instagram comments, call. They probably got the line shut down. Email, do what you can to bully them, and also bully your neighbors who might be supporting them so that that they can also get, because it's really going to impact everybody if it actually ends up going through.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we already talked about what that on the bailing out billionaires on the backs of Medicaid recipients
is wild boots, and it's gonna be Panem up in this bitch. We're gonna have the Hunger Games, and just know my faction is gonna win. So
may the odds ever be in your favor. We love y'all. We mean it. We'll catch y'all on the flip side. Holla.